So I'm having my drive at 5 with some epiphanies today. What is today's date? Today is the 10th of October 2018. So it was Columbus Day on Monday, and there's somebody that I see every day at a place I go to. Really nice woman. I'm thinking she's probably in her 40s. She is extremely liberal. Oh my gosh, she's extremely liberal. But we seem to get along well. I mean, But how do I know she's liberal? Oh my God, she's got all the talking points. So we were having a conversation about something, and because it's an office building or something, we got on the subject of Columbus Day, and I really don't know how that happened, but we got on the subject of Columbus Day, and she started to rant and rave about it. Oh, it had to do with her kids, if they had Columbus Day off or not. And she kind of got indignant about it. Well, how could he have discovered? It was already occupied by Native Americans. And so I gave her a little history lesson. And this is what I told her. Everybody that was living here, all the Native Americans that were here, were people at a Stone Age level of technology in the 1400s. Okay? And I don't care what anybody says. That's the plain truth. The plain truth is our ancestors in Western civilization, in Europe and the old world, meaning on the other side of the Atlantic Ocean, technology have progressed to metallurgy and the use of firearms and gunpowder and sailing ships. And, come on. So anyway, so she's insisting that he couldn't have discovered America when people were already here. I said, it's not that he discovered America. It's that he discovered this hemisphere of the world, which remained unknown to the civilized world at the time. Meaning all the civilizations on the other side of the Atlantic never knew this part of the world existed in this hemisphere. Okay? That is what Columbus's contribution is. Now, we could sit and argue about whether he was racist and he was horrible, it was the worst thing ever happened. Well, if it wasn't Columbus, somebody was coming. And it was going to be the Spaniards, whether you like it or not. It would have been it's the Spaniards. Columbus was Italian, but he was hired by the Spaniards, okay? But the point is, at that time in world history, in the 1400s, the Spaniards were the reigning superpower at the time. They controlled the seas. Okay? And that's plain and simple. They lost eventually. They had a war with England under Queen Elizabeth I in the 1600s, and I can't remember when that was, but that ruined Spain. Spain never recovered. It ruined Spain forever as a world power after that. Okay? And then the British ruled the seas, and those who controlled the seas controlled the trade, and those are the people who ruled the world at the time. So, this whole notion that, Columbus, they just scoff at him and all, regardless of what you may think of the man, regardless of how liberals vilify him, he did something at the time that nobody else did at that particular time in history. Now, one can make an argument that the Vikings, or the Norse, found North America before Columbus, and there seems to be some evidence of that, but they never even managed to stay here. They put some colonies, looks like, up near Nova Scotia, and they couldn't survive. They didn't make it. If we want to go further back, there is evidence that ancient Europeans, about 10,000 years ago, when the ice sheets were covering most of North America and most of Europe, ancient Europeans, prehistory Europeans, 10,000 years ago, there's some evidence that some were actually coming into North America along the eastern coast, along the ice sheets. And the theory is that a lot of the game was disappearing in Europe at the time, a lot of the megafauna, the mammoths and everything. And the theory is a lot of these nomadic and ancient European hunters for lack of a better term, cavemen, were turning to the ice sheets to hunt seals. And you get out on those ice sheets, and they would break off. And all of a sudden now, you're at the mercy of the ocean currents. And they believed that it was very probable that a lot of these people actually, managed to come over here on those ice sheets because the continents were closer together because the ice sheets covered such a vast amount of ocean, and you could just go around the rim. I mean, you couldn't walk it, but that's one of the theories, and they have found archaeological evidence of this through the way that the ancient Europeans were making flint heads was different than the ancient Asian people were coming in from the west through the land bridge. At least that's what the theory goes. So they had different tool making skills, and it was evident. They left evidence of it behind. There was a greater migration of people from Asia over here versus there was from Europe. So, but that's the truth. You don't like it? It's tough shit, But Columbus did some questionable things, but at the time, what he did was kind of unprecedented. He deserves his spot in history. The next thing you know, these liberals are going to be ripping his statue down, ripping him down, trying to get his name removed from the history books, like he never existed, because he was deemed racist and he was deemed this and that and everything else. But this argument that, how could he have discovered America? Good God, man. Think. If they taught history in schools instead of teaching about Marilyn Monroe and the homosexual agenda in the schools, and start teaching real things that people that you should know. But these young people, they don't know anything. They don't know history. It's scary. So that's kind of, and I got to go on this too. I have to say this. I've spent the last 3 days in a dentist chair at a dental school because it's cheaper. Okay, really great care. I mean, and my dentist is a young woman, the daughter of some Vietnamese immigrants that came here right after the Vietnam War. My guess is she's in her early 20s, and really nice girl, and enjoy talking to her. And she's very good at what she does, but I started to notice some things. There were some words that she didn't understand. Like she never heard the word copacetic, which I thought was very strange. One of her instructors used that word with me, and she was like, I don't know what that word means. And we both kind of looked at her. It's just kind of funny. And I was talking to her a little bit about, we were talking, and I told her a little about my life and what I like and all this, and I was telling her about pigeons. And she would go after we would have a conversation about something, she'd go and look it up. So she said she went and looked up what baby pigeons look like, and she was telling me, oh my gosh, they're so ugly. I said, well, you know what they're called? I said, they're called squabs. And she said, okay. I said, you ever heard the term squab? You're squabbing over something? No, it was another word she never heard, squabbing. I said it's because two young pigeons there's two pigeons in a nest, and they fight with each other, and they squabble. It's like squabbling. That's where it comes from. They like argue back and forth. It's just kind of a weird thing. And I realized that this young woman, I don't, maybe because her parents are immigrants, I don't know, but she's very well educated. So I was marveling at the new technology they have for dentists now. It's really pretty amazing. And I start to talk to her about my uncle, who lived to be 92 years old, and how he saw the progression of technology. And now I'm in a position where I see this progression of technology. Because I was telling her when I used to remember from dentist chairs having like a little silver spittoon type thing that you'd spit in it. She never heard of that. She actually had to ask one of her instructors, and her said, oh yeah, I remember. So we're talking about this, and then I mentioned something to her about, I was talking to her about my uncle, and I said my uncle remembers steam powered locomotives. And she looked at me really funny. And she said, well, I don't know what that is. I said, a steam-powered train. She had a blank look on her face. I said, you never seen a Western? You never watched a Western? any kind of thing depicting the ancient, the American West, any kind of movie. I mean, no, she's completely clueless. And I'm thinking to myself, wow. I mean, this girl knows teeth. She's great at that, but man, I mean, wow. It was a surprise to me. I'll be honest with you. I don't fault her for it, but I guess I digress. But I guess my point was with this thing with the Columbus Day. Don't sit there and vilify this guy for what he did. The man deserves his mark in history for whatever it was. It is what it is. You can't change it. You can't go back and change it. He is what he is. Did it mark the arrival of the Europeans in this hemisphere? Absolutely. In droves. And it totally changed the entire world. And did the Native Americans get massacred? Yes, they lost the war. They absolutely lost the war. Because it was a war that they fought. And they fought as Stone Age people. Don't let anybody tell you otherwise. They did not have metallurgy. They were using bone and they were using stone for tools. They were using bow and arrows with stone tips or bone tips. Okay? And they meet modern man with guns. What do you think is going to happen? If you have this idea that humanity is noble, you are sadly mistaken. One people group always surpasses the other people group based on the technology of their tools. And meaning technology of tools also goes to weapons, because weapons are tools. And when you come into a place that's basically untouched by human hands, you only have a handful of Native Americans here and there, and you have another place in the world where the forests have been depleted, the gold mines have been depleted, and you come over here, what do you think is going to happen? What do you think? You see nothing but endless forest, endless land that wants to be cut, tilled, farmed. I mean, come on. What do you think human beings are going to do? You are going to take that by force if necessary, and you are also going to displace the people that are already living there. And if they can't fight back on an equal footing to earn some peace, it's over. And that's what happened with Native Americans in a nutshell. They lost the war. Now, to their credit, they fought it longer than any other people in the history of mankind. They really fought it for a very long time. But you know what? You're only going to fight it so long because you end up with Western Europeans setting foot here with muskets and single-shot loaders, right? Well, a few... It didn't take long, what, about 100 years later? It's about 14... 15, 16, 17. So it's about 300 years later, 400 years later, you end up with repeating rifles, So, and you're still trying to compete. It's not going to happen. It's too late for you, But I mean, it's sad what happened to them, but there's nothing you can do to change things. It's over. It's said and done. They lost the war. There's no way they'll ever get it back. They've been defeated. And on this note with the Native Americans, and here's something that you never hear about. The Spaniards came here first, to this side of the world first. And it was the Spaniards that brought all the diseases to this part of the world first. The English did not get here until about the 1600s. The Spanish were already here since late 1400s. They brought all the diseases with them. And by the time the English got here, those diseases pretty much already had wiped out a huge portion of the Native Americans. Huge portion of them. So to say that yes, Europeans did bring it, but it was the Spaniards in particular that brought it. Like I said, you had that 100 years that basically a 200-year period before the English got here, okay, to set up colonies up in New England. The Spanish were already throughout the Caribbean and the Gulf Coast and through South America. They already spread the disease, and it already was running rampant, the smallpox and everything else. And most of the Native Americans were already done in 200 years later. So what remnant was left was pretty much immune to all the European diseases, and so they were left to fight a war, which they lost. So that's the truth. regardless of what the history books teach you or teach your kids, because they won't teach that. They won't teach that. And once again, it's the same old story. One people group replaces the other. That's what happens. You know, I mean, it's human society. It's all it's been. It's been one empire raises and subdues the next empire. They get weak and the next one rises. I mean, we can go through a historical account of this. You know, you had the Assyrians, then you had the Babylons, then you had the Persians, then you had the Greeks, the Macedonians under Alexander the Great, and then out of that eventually comes Imperial Rome. Rome shows up, you know, and really puts a boot heel to the known world at the time and takes control. And what are you going to do? And the Romans subjugated just about everybody in the known world. I mean, they were even up in Britain. Okay, I mean, they pretty much subdued everyone, and all those ancient people that, if you know anything about history, the Goths, the Visigoths, and all these different people groups that were these ancient Europeans before, as we know them, as what they are now, and the countries they are now, they were taken over by the Roman Empire. And some of those people were destroyed. There were ethnic groups that were wiped out by the Romans because the Romans found them so vile and disgusting. They committed genocide on them. They wiped them out. I mean, there were some really nasty, really what you would probably call degenerative people in that ancient world. And the Romans, when they came across them, they just took them out. And then they salted the earth so they would never rise again. And they are just a byline in the historical record. So that's my drive at 5 and my take on Columbus Day. And I hope it never goes away, because people will forget and they'll try to make up some other stupid stuff that's not really true to make it seem romantic and to justify some liberal agenda to make the world a better place, when all they're about is just censoring everybody. That's all a liberal agenda is. Shape the world into what you want it to be, and we're not going to acknowledge anything in the past unless it suits our needs. I mean, they're horrible. I can't stand them. I don't like liberals. You guys suck, and you know nothing. So, until next time, try to enjoy your life.